All right, we're going to talk about human evolution today. And when we talk about human evolution, we have to mention other primates as well. So, just to review a little bit there, we are primates. So, we're going to talk about that and address that connection today. So, what are primates, first of all? We have to remember that they are a type of mammal, which includes us as humans, with opposable thumbs, and we have binocular vision. Now, bi means two, so we have two eyes that see, right? Now, we know that our ancestors, if we're a primate, may have coexisted with dinosaurs, so that's kind of fascinating to think about. So humans share a common ancestor with chimpanzees. We've mentioned that, right? That misconception where people say, oh, we evolved from apes and all of that. Nope, we have a common ancestor. We didn't evolve from them. And I just want to reiterate that and mention that again. That's an important thing that we want to be sure we understand. So we need to start out talking about human evolution and mentioning the hominids. So there are quite a few terms that we're going to go over, different types of living things related to human evolution. So a lot of different pieces today that we're going to connect. So the first group were hominids. They were a type of primate. They were bipedals. In other words, they walked on 2 feet upright, right? Because we mentioned bi means two and pedalism is walking, right? So they had these long lower limbs, they didn't have a tail, and humans are in this family. So scientists have named about 18 types of them. It doesn't mean that that's all there was, but it's important to note that, we're making connections. We don't have all of the pieces necessarily. So early hominids were classified as what we call Australopithecines. So that is a very, very important skeleton that was found, actually, and we might have more time to talk about that. But there was a skeleton in the 70s, I believe, where we found many, many pieces that we had been missing. So if we look at the primate skeleton here, the bones of a gorilla, which is, of course, a type of ape, and a human on the right, the gorillas on the left, they have very, very similar parts, right? So you can look at them and kind of make that connection. But humans are made to walk a little more upright, right? So we're adapted to walk upright. So you can see the pelvis is vertical. This is the pelvis, this purple area. So our skeleton is a little bit more upright, right? And our spine, our vertebrae and our spine are curved in what we call an S shape. Looks like an S, right? So our arms are shorter than our legs, whereas the opposite is true of the gorilla. So they have this large rib cage, heavy neck, their head is forward, it's curved, their spine is curved more in a C shape, and their arms are long, longer than their legs. So you can really see the difference in that picture. So what we have to understand too when we look at that timeline is that various hominids were alive at the same time. It's not like there was one type. There were different types that it may have coexisted or at least lived at the same time. So the prefix homo, which we actually mentioned before when we talked about homogeneous, or I should say homologous chromosomes, that means the same, right? So it's a group of hominids that lived about 2.4 million years ago. They migrated and they had large brains. Now you might think to yourself, who cares? We migrate too. But think about a time where we didn't necessarily have the means to migrate or travel. So that says a lot. So I want you to be thinking about that as we move through here. Also, we have Homo habilis. So this is a specific species. And then we have Homo erectus, right? So they're tall, they stood upright. And these guys were as tall as what we would say modern day today humans are. Neanderthals also, we call them more recent hominids, even though it doesn't seem recent, right? 230,000 years ago, we started to see them, and you might think, gosh, that's a long time. But think about it in terms of that timeline, right? The Earth is 4.3 billion years old, right? So when you think of 230,000 years ago, that's not that much, right? Now look at all the things that the Neanderthals, and again, this is another group of hominids, these guys hunted large animals, they cared for the sick, they buried their dead, they made fires, they wore clothing. Now you might think, okay, we do all that, no big deal, right? But think about it too, they had tradition, they had culture, they had sort of like a way of life and a routine and all of that. So that's a big deal. You didn't see that up to this point. So that is something to take note of. And then suddenly 30,000 years ago, they all but disappeared. So they're gone, right? And we're not sure why. Maybe something else sort of came along, right? So that's important to note. And I already mentioned, what does this say about their species, right? They had organization, they had culture, they had time, they had traditions, all of that. Now, you may have heard the term Homo sapiens. That's us, right? So this is modern humans. And these modern humans appeared about between 100 and 160,000 years ago. So you start to see a smaller, flatter face than what you saw in the Neanderthals. And again, a little bit more complexity, right? So you start to see art and sculptures, paintings, clothing, again, continuing on with that complex, organized society, which is kind of a big deal, right? So that's an important piece to note. Now, we just brushed the surface of this and talked about the basics. Hopefully, we'll be able to dive in a little bit more as we continue on in class.